Hello guys, welcome to a calm journey back in time. Close your eyes and imagine yourself in a quiet corner of medieval Europe. It's early morning in the year of our Lord 1374, and a small village lies still under the last cool breath of night. The sky is just beginning to pale with the first hints of dawn. In the distance, a rooster lifts its throat and crows, breaking the silence. One by one, lights start to flicker in humble cottage windows as the peasants stir from sleep. The air is already warm, promising another hot summer day. You take a slow, deep breath, smelling the earthy scent of dew on the fields mixed with wood smoke from dying hearth embers. The village is waking gently. A few thin wisps of smoke curl from thatched rooftops where simple homes huddle together. Inside these huts, families are rising from their straw beds, stretching stiff muscles after a restless night. Imagine that you are there, stepping barefoot onto the cool dirt floor of a peasant's cottage. The floor is nothing more than packed earth covered in a scattering of last year's dried rushes and herbs. The scent of old hay and dried lavender clings faintly in the air, a small attempt to keep fleas and pests at bay. All around you, in the dim dawn light, you can make out the shapes of family members stirring. There are no separate bedrooms here. Everyone, mother, father, children, and perhaps an aging grandparent, sleeps in the same single room. Privacy does not exist in this world, but no one finds that strange. It's simply how life is lived, side by side and close. In one corner of the cottage, a cow shifts on its tether, and a pair of goats bleat softly. Yes, some of the animals share the living space, especially at night. Chickens rustle in a little basket by the door. Bringing the animals inside keeps them safe from wolves or thieves in the darkness. It also means the family sleeps with the sounds and smells of beasts next to them, and likely a few extra fleas and flies that the creatures carry. But that is a price worth paying for security. Outside, beyond the cottages, dawn reveals a world still damp with dew. A faint mist hugs the low hollows of the fields, and countless tiny droplets of moisture sparkle on the leaves and grasses like beads of glass. In the hedgerows at the village edge, blackbirds and sparrows begin to flutter and chirp their morning songs, joining the rooster's call. The air carries a fleeting freshness, almost cool, that will vanish as soon as the sun climbs. For now, it smells of wet earth, crushed grass, and the subtle sweetness of summer wildflowers opening to the early light. As you stand in the doorway, the sky grows lighter. The first rays of sunlight peek over gently rolling fields and thick forests beyond. A cool dawn breeze slips into the cottage, stirring the loose strands of straw on the floor. You hear the quiet groans and murmurs as the peasants begin their day. A father pulls on a rough linen shirt that he laid aside the night before. The shirt is undyed and worn soft with age, one of perhaps only 2 shirts he owns. Over it, he'll put a simple pair of woolen breeches if the day requires, though many prefer to work in just a long shirt when the heat grows severe. A mother wakes and immediately tends to a clay cup where last night's embers still faintly glow. She breathes on them gently, adding a few dry twigs until a small flame flickers. The orange light dances on her tired face. She is young, perhaps not yet 25, but already her skin is lined with care and weather. Her hair is tucked away under a linen kerchief, more out of habit than vanity. It keeps her hair out of the way as she works, and perhaps helps a little against the lice that are a constant companion. In the corner, a toddler whimpers, eyes still half shut. The mother hushes the little one softly, lifting the child against her hip. The baby's skin is warm and clammy. The night was uncomfortably hot, even in darkness. She murmurs a quiet lullaby under her breath, a tune inherited from her own mother. Outside, another rooster crows and a few birds chirp sleepily, as if reluctant to leave the comfort of night's coolness. Before we follow this family further into their day, take a moment to breathe deeply and settle in. Here, in this medieval dawn, there is no rush. In our modern world, we might flick on a fan or sip a cold drink to keep cool, but in this village, none of those comforts exist. If you find these gentle imaginings comforting, you're welcome to softly support this journey, perhaps by giving a subtle like to this narration, or even joining our little community of history dreamers. There's no need to do anything at all, though. Just relax and drift with me through the village as the day unfolds. The father, let's call him Tom for the sake of our story, slips outside into the fresh morning air. The sunlight is still pale and gentle at this hour, casting long shadows of the huts across the ground. Tom closes his eyes for a moment and offers a brief prayer of thanks for the dawn. Like most peasants, he is a religious man in a simple, unquestioning way. Life and survival are so closely tied to faith and fortune. Today might be the feast of a minor saint, or perhaps just an ordinary summer day. Either way, he entrusts it to God. He stretches his arms, working out the knots in his shoulders. Yesterday was long, and today will be no different. His joints crack softly. At maybe 30 years old, Tom's body is already worn from decades of labor under the sun. Many would consider him middle-aged, or even old by the standards of his time. Few peasants live beyond their 40s. Those who reach such ages are respected as elders, though they remain a small number. Tom glances across the lane to see old Père Michel hobbling out of his hut with a walking stick. Père Michel might be 50, an ancient in this community, with a back bent like a bow. Even so, at dawn he too rises to tend the small garden patch behind his home. There is no true retirement for a peasant. As long as one can move, one works as best one can. As the light grows, the village comes alive quietly. You can hear the low voices of neighbors exchanging a few words as they pass by on the way to the fields. A teenage boy leads a pair of oxen slowly down the rutted dirt road, the great beast's hooves thudding on the ground. The boy rubs sleep from his eyes. He was up before the sun to yoke the oxen, hulking brown creatures whose patience and strength are essential for plowing and hauling. Though it is summer and the major plowing of spring is past, the oxen will still earn their keep, pulling carts of hay or plowing second crops. Flies buzz around their ears in the growing warmth, and the boy flicks the insects away with a leafy branch as he walks. Under the eaves of the cottages, swallows dart out to catch morning insects. A couple of village dogs trot about, sniffing for scraps, their tongues already lolling with the hint of heat to come. The ground is dry and dusty. It has not rained in over a week, and some of the men have started to worry. Summer in recent years has been unpredictable. Some summers are kind, with just enough showers to nourish the crops. Others bring relentless drought or sudden storms. The older folks still talk about the great famine of a generation ago, the disastrous harvest of 1315, when ceaseless rains rotted the grain in the fields. Many in that time went hungry, and some even starved. Those memories linger, passed down in hushed tones, and every summer carries an undercurrent of anxiety. Will the crops be good? Will there be enough? But on this particular morning, the wheat in the field stands tall and golden under the dawn light. The villagers cast hopeful eyes toward those ripening fields as they begin their work. If the weather holds and the Lord is merciful, in a few weeks the harvest will be plentiful. For now, there is still hay to cut and other tasks to handle in preparation. Tom steps back into the cottage briefly, ducking under the low lintel. Inside, it is dim and close. Already, the air indoors is warming and carries the odors of human and animal presence. Sweat, last night's oniony stew, the manure from the goat in the corner, mingling into the thick atmosphere. In the gloom, Tom's wife, we can call her Marie, ladles a bit of porridge from a small iron pot hanging over the revived hearth fire. The porridge is thin this morning. The family's stores of grain are low in these late summer weeks before the new harvest. Marie had mixed in some ground peas and a handful of herbs to stretch the meal. It's not much, but it will have to suffice to break the night's fast. Marie hands her husband a wooden bowl of the warm, gruel-like breakfast. Tom murmurs thanks and sits on a stool near the open door, where a bit of morning breeze enters. One by one, the children shuffle over, rubbing their eyes to get their share. First, the eldest boy, already nearly as tall as his father at 15, with sun-bleached hair and a lean, hungry look. Then his younger sister, around 12, freckled and barefoot, her brown hair in 2 tangled braids. She yawns, still drowsy. Lastly, little Jean, the toddler on his mother's hip, who is perhaps 18 months old. Marie lets the toddler taste a bit of the porridge. It's mostly mashed beans and barley, easy for a small child to swallow. John had only his mother's milk until recently, but now he eats what the family eats, for better or worse. Marie knows the risks of summer weaning. She has seen too many babies sicken when they start on solid food and the village's water. But her milk has dried up with the new pregnancy coming, so she has no choice but to feed him soft foods and pray he stays healthy. As they eat their simple meal, the family is quiet. Mornings are not a time for chatter. Everyone is savoring the moment of relative coolness and the small comfort of food in their belly. Outside the door, the sun's rays are strengthening, beginning to dry the dew on the grass. The teenage boy, let's call him Pierre, gulps the last of his porridge and hands the bowl back to his mother. He grabs a bit of coarse bread as well, a hard heel left over from yesterday. Dipping it in the porridge to soften it, he chews quickly. Today, Pierre will go with his father to the fields to cut hay. It's early July, haymaking time in these parts, and a neighbor's ox cart is already creaking down the road to the meadow, ready to collect the cut grass. Marie reminds them to bring some water or ale for the day. She hands Tom a leather flask which she filled at dawn. Inside is small beer, a very weak ale brewed a few days ago from leftover grain. It's slightly sour but safer to drink than water from the stream, which can be foul in summer. Many villagers have learned the hard way that drinking straight from the stream or river can bring stomach pains or worse, especially when everyone dumps their waste in that same water. The communal well in the village provides cleaner water, and Marie did draw well water for cooking this morning. But even a clear well can run low or stagnate in high summer. So the family relies on home-brewed ale for most of their thirst. It's not the rich, heady ale of a tavern, but a thin ale, just enough fermentation to kill off germs and give a bit of taste. Tom takes the flask gratefully. Already he can feel thirst creeping in as the day warms. With a gentle pat on his wife's shoulder, he steps outside again, with Pierre trailing behind carrying the scythes. Marie watches them go with a small frown of worry. The scythes are sharp, and haymaking can be dangerous if one is careless or too tired. But she says nothing. She simply murmurs a quick blessing under her breath. May God keep them safe today. Then she turns back inside to tackle her own morning chores. As the light grows, the village comes alive quietly. You can hear the low voices of neighbors exchanging a few words as they pass by on the way to the fields. A teenage boy leads a pair of oxen slowly down the rutted dirt road, the great beast's hooves thudding on the ground. The boy rubs sleep from his eyes. He was up before the sun to yoke the oxen, hulking brown creatures whose patience and strength are essential for plowing and hauling. Though it is summer and the major plowing of spring is past, the oxen will still earn their keep, pulling carts of hay or plowing second crops. Flies buzz around their ears in the growing warmth, and the boy flicks the insects away with a leafy branch as he walks. Under the eaves of the cottages, swallows dart out to catch morning insects. A couple of village dogs trot about, sniffing for scraps, their tongues already lolling with the hint of heat to come. The ground is dry and dusty. It has not rained in over a week, and some of the men have started to worry. Summer in recent years has been unpredictable. Some summers are kind, with just enough showers to nourish the crops. Others bring relentless drought or sudden storms. The older folks still talk about the great famine of a generation ago, the disastrous harvest of 1315, when ceaseless rains rotted the grain in the fields. Many in that time went hungry, and some even starved. Those memories linger, passed down in hushed tones, and every summer carries an undercurrent of anxiety. Will the crops be good? Will there be enough? But on this particular morning, the wheat in the field stands tall and golden under the dawn light. The villagers cast hopeful eyes toward those ripening fields as they begin their work. If the weather holds and the Lord is merciful, in a few weeks the harvest will be plentiful. For now, there is still hay to cut and other tasks to handle in preparation. Tom steps back into the cottage briefly, ducking under the low lintel. Inside, it is dim and close. Already, the air indoors is warming and carries the odors of human and animal presence. Sweat, last night's oniony stew, the manure from the goat in the corner, mingling into the thick atmosphere. In the gloom, Tom's wife, we can call her Marie, ladles a bit of porridge from a small iron pot hanging over the revived hearth fire. The porridge is thin this morning. The family's stores of grain are low in these late summer weeks before the new harvest. Marie had mixed in some ground peas and a handful of herbs to stretch the meal. It's not much, but it will have to suffice to break the night's fast. Marie hands her husband a wooden bowl of the warm, gruel-like breakfast. Tom murmurs thanks and sits on a stool near the open door, where a bit of morning breeze enters. One by one, the children shuffle over, rubbing their eyes to get their share. First the eldest boy, already nearly as tall as his father at 15, with sun-bleached hair and a lean, hungry look. Then his younger sister, around 12, freckled and barefoot, her brown hair in 2 tangled braids. She yawns, still drowsy. Lastly, little Jean, the toddler on his mother's hip, who is perhaps 18 months old. Marie lets the toddler taste a bit of the porridge. It's mostly mashed beans and barley, easy for a small child to swallow. Jean had only his mother's milk until recently, but now he eats what the family eats, for better or worse. Marie knows the risks of summer weaning. She has seen too many babies sicken when they start on solid food and the village's water. But her milk has dried up with the new pregnancy coming, so she has no choice but to feed him soft foods and pray he stays healthy. As they eat their simple meal, the family is quiet. Mornings are not a time for chatter. Everyone is savoring the moment of relative coolness and the small comfort of food in their belly. Outside the door, the sun's rays are strengthening, beginning to dry the dew on the grass. The teenage boy, let's call him Pierre, gulps the last of his porridge and hands the bowl back to his mother. He grabs a bit of coarse bread as well, a hard heel left over from yesterday. Dipping it in the porridge to soften it, he chews quickly. Today, Pierre will go with his father to the fields to cut hay. It's early July, haymaking time in these parts, and a neighbor's ox cart is already creaking down the road to the meadow, ready to collect the cut grass. Marie reminds them to bring some water or ale for the day. She hands Tom a leather flask, which she filled at dawn. Inside is small beer, a very weak ale brewed a few days ago from leftover grain. It's slightly sour, but safer to drink than water from the stream, which can be foul in summer. Many villagers have learned the hard way that drinking straight from the stream or river can bring stomach pains or worse, especially when everyone dumps their waste in that same water. The communal well in the village provides cleaner water, and Marie did draw well water for cooking this morning, but even a clear well can run low or stagnate in high summer, so the family relies on home-brewed ale for most of their thirst. It's not the rich, heady ale of a tavern, but a thin ale, just enough fermentation to kill off germs and give a bit of taste. Tom takes the flask gratefully. Already he can feel thirst creeping in as the day warms. With a gentle pat on his wife's shoulder, he steps outside again, with Pierre trailing behind, carrying the scythes. Marie watches them go with a small frown of worry. The scythes are sharp and haymaking can be dangerous if one is careless or too tired. But she says nothing. She simply murmurs a quick blessing under her breath. May God keep them safe today. Then she turns back inside to tackle her own morning chores. Now the sunlight truly gilds the village. It washes over the little clusters of huts, each with its garden plot, and perhaps a pig or chicken snuffling about. You can see women emerging from their homes, balancing wooden buckets for water on their hips. One of these women is a neighbor, Colette, who walks with Marie to the well each morning. Marie lifts 2 empty pails by the door and steps out, breathing in the morning air deeply before the heat grows oppressive. Her daughter, let's call her Isabel, runs to catch up, offering to help her mother carry water. At 12, Isabel is eager to show she's useful. Perhaps she remembers the pride she felt the first time she could carry a bucket on her own without spilling too much. Today, she might not be able to lift a full bucket, but she can manage a smaller one, or at least keep her mother company. Together they walk down the dusty path to the village well, joining a few other women already there. The well is a simple stone-lined hole with a wooden windlass. One by one, the women wind up sloshing buckets of cool water from deep underground. There's a bit of chatter here in the morning, quietly so as not to disturb the peace of dawn too much. They exchange greetings, maybe a gentle joke or two despite their fatigue. Marie listens to Colette complain softly that her youngest boy was up crying much of the night with a rash. Perhaps the heat prickled his tender skin, or maybe a swarm of mosquitoes found him. Marie nods sympathetically. Her own arms and neck are dotted with red bites from the insects that thrive in these warm months. She advises Colette to wash the baby with a little water, steeped in chamomile, if she has any, a folk remedy for soothing skin. They both know it may not help much, but sharing such advice is a way to show care. Nearby, a trio of adolescent girls fill their buckets and giggle amongst themselves. They whisper about a boy from the next village who visited during last Sunday's Mass, casting sidelong glances as they speculate which of them he favored with a smile. Though marriages here are mostly practical arrangements made by families, the hearts of these young girls still flutter at the thought of romance. One girl of perhaps 14 is already promised to a farmer's son in a neighboring parish, an agreement between their parents to secure a bit of land and alliance. She blushes as her friends tease her about the upcoming betrothal. Childhood is brief, and soon she'll be keeping house and bearing children. Yet in this golden moment of youth, they all indulge in a little dreaming. By their mid-teens, most village girls marry and begin adult life, so these friends cherish their last carefree days. Their laughter is soft and brief, as innocent as the wild flowers woven in their hair. In a life that will demand endless work and obedience, such murmured confidences and hopes are a gentle, secret joy shared just between girls before the morning's duties call them back to reality. Back in the cottage, Marie and Isabel return home with full buckets of water. The weight is considerable. Each full wooden bucket can weigh over 20 or 30 pounds, and Marie's arms ache. She's careful not to spill any precious drops. Fetching water is hard enough that she doesn't want to waste it. Isabel is carrying a smaller pot with both hands, her thin arms trembling slightly from the effort. They set the water down just outside the door for a moment to catch their breath. Marie can already feel perspiration gathering at her temples from that short walk. The sun is climbing, and the cool dawn is swiftly giving way to a warm morning. Before the sun gets too high, Marie wants to finish some tasks in the garden behind the house. A small fenced patch of ground holds a few rows of vegetables, cabbages, onions, some beans climbing on poles, and a patch of herbs and medicinal plants. This little garden is vital to her family's diet, especially in summer when the stored grain from last year is nearly gone. She ties her kerchief more securely over her hair and grabs a wooden dipper to water the most thirsty plants. From the buckets drawn at the well, she pours carefully at the base of each cabbage and along the bean rows. The earth greedily drinks the water, and Marie wishes she could afford to use more. But water is heavy to carry, and she must save some for cooking and washing. She knows also that if the sun is too fierce today, much of this moisture will just bake off. But still, she does what she can. As she works, little John toddles at her side in the garden, amusing himself by picking up clods of dirt and plopping them down. The toddler's cheeks are flushed pink. Even at his young age, he is bareheaded in the sun. A hat for a babe is a rare luxury here. Marie occasionally shoos him into the shade of the house wall when he starts to wander too far into the direct sunlight. She worries quietly about the heat. Infants can wilt like the cabbages if not watched. Perhaps she'll ask her daughter to keep the little one inside during the hottest part of the day. Isabel has begun her own chore. Kneeling by a wooden tub just outside the door, she starts the laundry. Washing clothes is a laborious process and not done very often. It uses precious water and soap is scarce. But some small items like linens and the toddler's soiled smock need more frequent cleaning, especially in this heat when odors quickly intensify. The soap she uses is a coarse concoction of animal fat and ashes that her mother traded for last spring. It's harsh and almost sandy, but it's all they have. Isabel scrubs a linen cloth against a washing board, her hands turning red and raw from the lye in the soap. She hums softly to distract herself, a little tune about a fox in the forest that the village children like to sing. As mid-morning approaches, the sun's strength grows. The gentle gold of dawn has sharpened into a bright white glare. In the hay meadows, Tom stops for a moment and straightens his back, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. His shirt is already sticking to his skin. When he lifts his cap, you can see his hair is damp and sweat runs in rivulets down the sides of his face. He signals to Pierre and the others that it's time for a short break. They have been cutting for hours, and if they don't rest now, the heat will punish them later. They gather under the meager shade of a lone oak tree at the edge of the meadow. It's the only refuge of shade in the immediate area, and though it doesn't provide much coolness, at least they are out of the direct sun for a while. The men take swigs from their flasks. Tom passes the leather bottle of small ale to Pierre after he's had a deep drink himself. The liquid is warm and a bit sour, but it's wet and that's what matters. Pierre hadn't realized how thirsty he was until now. His mouth was dry from breathing hard during the cutting. He drinks eagerly, wiping a trickle that escapes his lips. The ale's slight tang sits in his belly and gives a tiny spark of energy. One of the older men, lean and weathered Jock, uncorks a clay jug he brought and offers it around. It's a bit of watered wine, a rare treat, likely given by the Lord as part of wages for some extra work. Sharing it is a friendly gesture. Each man takes a small sip. The wine is diluted and sour, but still stronger than the mild ale. It lightens the mood for a moment. Jock even chuckles as one younger fellow grimaces at the taste. "It's not fine French claret, I know," he jokes quietly, "but it's better than the pond water, eh?" The others smile. Humor is not lost on them, even when life is hard. In fact, a bit of laughter now and again is essential to endure the monotony and hardship. As they rest, they listen to the sounds around them. The fields seem alive with the buzz of insects, bees visiting wild flowers at the edge of the field, grasshoppers clicking in the grass. Flies abound too. Sweat and humans always attract them. Several flies land on Tom's damp arms and face. He waves them away, only for more to take their place. The pests are relentless, and there's no escaping them out here. A particularly bold horsefly bites at Pierre's ankle, where he's rolled up his rough wool trousers. He slaps at it with a yelp, and it flies off, leaving a painful welt. The men commiserate. They all wear similar red blotches from horsefly bites. Those flies take a chunk of flesh and draw blood, and in summer they swarm near livestock and people alike. From their hill, the workers can see the patchwork of fields surrounding the village. Some fields lie fallow, resting this year as part of the cycle. Others are green with beans or barley, and the largest fields are golden with wheat nearly ready for harvest. In the distance, the river glints. They know that along its marshy banks, mosquitoes breed in droves. At dusk, those little bloodsuckers will rise up and torment everyone in the village. Already at night, the people have been slapping at their itchy bites. Some children are covered in them, scratching until their skin bleeds. But in daylight now, it's the flies and gnats that bug them, along with the harsh sun. After a brief rest, they must return to work. The hay won't cut itself, and they want to finish this field by midday if possible. Tom cracks his back and stands, picking up his scythe again. Courage, mes amis, he says softly to the others, an encouragement to press on. They spread out once more in the meadow. The sun now is near its zenith, beating almost straight down on their bent backs. The movements that were easy at dawn now feel slower, heavier. Each swing of the scythe seems to cost more effort. Pierre's shirt is completely drenched. Sweat drips from his forehead into his eyes, stinging them, so he pauses to wipe his face on his sleeve. The cloth is no drier, of course, only smeared with dust, but he blinks and continues. Down in the village, it's not only the field workers who feel the mounting heat. Marie, having finished watering and a bit of weeding, has moved on to other chores in the house. Inside, the air is still and growing warm. She keeps the door propped open with a stone to allow any breeze. But in truth, there's little breeze to be had now. The interior of the cottage is dim, lit mainly by what light spills through the door, and a single small window opening. That window has no glass, just a wooden shutter that stands open. A couple of chickens have wandered in through the doorway, clucking softly as they peck at the dirt floor, hoping to find dropped crumbs or pesky insects. Marie doesn't mind. They will eat any fleas they catch, which is a tiny help. Flies, however, circle everywhere. One particularly persistent fly lands on the rim of the pot where she's stirring some pottage for the midday meal. She shoos it with her hand, covering the pot with a cloth. It's a constant battle to keep the flies out of the food. There is a saying among peasants that in summertime you eat as much fly as food, because inevitably some will land in the stew or on the bread. Marie has caught her children spitting out the occasional fly that found its way into their cup. It's unpleasant, but simply part of life. By late morning, the small cooking fire in the hearth has raised the temperature inside even more. Marie's face glistens with sweat as she leans over the pot. She is cooking a thin cabbage soup with a few shreds of salted pork fat for flavor. Their main meal will be at midday. That pork fat is precious. The family's pig was slaughtered last winter, and only a few scraps remain in salt. She will not have fresh meat again until maybe autumn, unless one of the chickens is sacrificed. But eggs are more valuable than a scrawny hen's meal would be, so the diet remains primarily grains and vegetables, light fare that ironically might be better in this heat than heavy meat. Still, salt pork is welcome for its taste, and the salt replaces what their bodies lose from so much sweating. Little Jean sits naked on the earthen floor near his mother, playing with a wooden spoon. It's cooler for young children to go without clothes on the hottest days, and it saves washing dirty garments. His belly protrudes round and firm. Some of that is a bit of malnutrition, and possibly worms. Many children have swollen stomachs from intestinal parasites, picked up as soon as they crawl and put dirty fingers in their mouth. No one in the village truly understands the cause. They just know many children always have belly aches and pass worms sometimes. They consider it one of many common afflictions of childhood. Marie has given Jean a tiny dose of wormwood tea before, an old remedy to expel worms. It tastes bitter and made him cry, but she hopes it helped. She'll likely give him another dose after the next full moon, as per local wisdom. Some say deworming works best then. Isabel finishes scrubbing the laundry and hangs a few pieces on a line outside. Under the now bright sun, they will dry quickly, though they may not smell fresh. Nothing in the moist summer air smells truly fresh, except perhaps the herbs. At least the sun will bleach and purify the linens a bit. She rubs her aching hands, which are red and rough from the lye soap. Taking little Jean by the hand, Isabel leads him under the shade of a tree for a moment, distracting him with a simple game of peekaboo, making him giggle. She loves her baby brother dearly, despite how fussy he can be on these hot days. Noontime approaches. In the church tower at the center of the village, the old bell ringer climbs the narrow stairs. At exactly midday, he begins to toll the bell. The sound is dull and heavy in the thick summer air, but it carries across the fields. Ding, dong, ding. 9 times it rings, a signal that it's the hour of sext, the midday prayer hour. Many peasants pause when they hear it, not necessarily to recite a formal prayer, though some may whisper the Angelus or a Hail Mary, but because the bell also simply marks the midday rest. Out in the hayfield, as soon as the distant bell is heard, the workers gratefully lower their scythes. It is time for the dinner break, the main meal of their day, and a chance to escape the sun for a short while. The hay-cutting crew begins to trudge back toward the village, some men swinging their arms a little to cool off, shirts sticking to their backs. Pierre lags slightly behind his father, feeling the effects of the long morning. His head is throbbing from the sun, and he's ravenously hungry. He can practically imagine the taste of the cabbage soup or whatever might be waiting, anything to fill the gnawing pit in his stomach. As they walk, one of the older farmers places a broad straw hat on Pierre's head, with a grin. The man must have noticed Pierre had no hat, and a face red as a beet from sunburn. "Here, lad," he says kindly, "use mine for now. You'll cook your brain out here bareheaded." Pierre smiles sheepishly in thanks and lets the shade of the woven straw shield his face and neck for the remainder of the walk home. Wide-brimmed hats are a common defense against the sun. Many peasants weave their own from straw or reeds. They aren't fancy, but they do the job. Those who don't have one might use a cloth or coif over their head, or even a makeshift hood attached to their shirt. The village priest often cautions the peasants to cover their heads in high sun. Even the local wise woman says too much sun can make a person feverish and angry. The theory of humors, the heat provoking too much choler in the body. Approaching the cottages, the group of men splits off to their respective homes. Tom and Pierre step into their yard and immediately seek the water bucket that Marie left by the door. Tom lifts the ladle and drinks deeply the water that by now is warm. Pierre impatiently waits his turn, licking dry lips, and then gulps down several mouthfuls. The water tastes a little of wood from the bucket, and perhaps a hint of algae. Not unusual in summer, but still it is refreshing to have plain water after hours of sweaty work. Marie meets them at the threshold with a faint smile. She has bowls of the simple soup ready. The father and son are grateful as they collapse onto stools or an upturned log in the shade of the house to eat. The family gathers for this midday meal. Even the 12-year-old Isabel takes a break from her chores to eat, and little Jean clutches a crust of bread he can gnaw on. The cabbage and pea soup is ladled into each bowl, and there is a bit of last week's bread to dip in it. The bread is very hard by now, baked many days ago, but soaking it softens it enough to chew. It's made of coarse rye and barley, dark and dense with bits of bran that stick in the teeth. The Though not delicious by any grand measure, to the peasants it is life-giving sustenance. As they eat, they don't speak much at first, focused on filling themselves. Their faces gleam with perspiration. Even sitting still in the shade, the heat is oppressive at this hour. Flies gather immediately, drawn by the scent of the meal. They land on the rims of the bowls and even on the food if it's not shooed away. Marie waves her hand periodically over Jean's bowl to keep the insects off his portion. The toddler, oblivious, mashes his bread into the soup happily. Tom chews slowly, savoring each bite as a moment of rest as well as nourishment. The only sounds are the buzzing of those pesky flies and the distant hum of cicadas starting their midday chorus in the trees beyond the fields. Yes, even the insects seem louder in the heat of this noontide lull. The villagers notice how everything falls quiet in the peak of a hot day. The birds retreat to the depths of hedges and stop singing. The chickens pant with beaks open under any shade they can find. The very earth seems to be holding its breath under the sun's glare. All one hears is the incessant drone of cicadas in the warmer regions, or myriad grasshoppers and crickets. The air itself trembles with heat. If you look out over the road, you might see the wavering ripples of hot air near the ground, distorting the view like a shimmering veil. After eating, the family rests just a little. It's far too hot now to rush straight back to work under the direct sun. Many peasants take a kind of brief midday respite if they can. Not exactly a nap always, though some might close their eyes for a few minutes, but a slow, languid pause to regain strength. Tom leans against the wall of the cottage, feeling the rough daub against his back, and closes his eyes. He is not asleep. Years of labor have made it easy for him to slip into a light doze when needed, but he stays half awake, listening to the buzzing of insects and the distant clank of someone drawing water from the well. His mind drifts. Perhaps he silently recites a prayer, or perhaps he just empties his thoughts, letting the heaviness of the air lull him. As they rest, a few of the men quietly exchange concerns about the obligations that weigh on them. Tom mentions that once his own harvest is done, he must still give a portion of his grain as rent to their lord and a tithe to the church. 1 sheaf in every 10 will be carted to the priest's barn. The others nod. Every family faces the same duty, and it can mean the difference between a comfortable winter and a hungry one. They also know the Lord's steward will soon announce the days when the peasants must work on the Lord's demaise fields, fulfilling their required free labor. It's an added burden in the heat of harvest, but refusal or delay is unthinkable. Tradition and fear enforce their compliance. A young man sighs that it hardly feels fair to toil so hard and yet owe so much, but an older worker quickly shushes him and glances around warily. Open complaints are dangerous. They have been taught since childhood that God and King ordained this order of life, and so the men fall silent again, each swallowing his frustration and resolving to meet his duties as always, however heavy they feel. As the villagers sit in the stillness, some can't help but worry about illnesses that often accompany such heat. It is well known that summer is when the bad air brings diseases. Only 20-some years ago, the Great Pestilence, the Black Death, swept through the region in one terrible summer, striking down rich and poor alike. Many here lost parents or siblings in that outbreak, and every unusually hot, foul-smelling day revives those fears. They believe that the air itself becomes corrupt in the heat, especially if foul odors from garbage or swampy water hang around. To ward off sickness, some villagers carry small posies of sweet herbs, pressing them to their noses in hope of protecting themselves from the invisible poison. Mothers burn rosemary or juniper branches, letting the sharp smoke drift through their homes to cleanse the atmosphere of any lurking plague. These measures offer comfort more than cure. Everyone understands on some level that if God wills an illness to come, it will come. Still, As they rest, a few cast anxious glances at the haze in the air, wondering if it carries fever or plague on its wings. Time flows slowly in these early afternoon hours. Even conversation dries up now. All minds are turned inward, conserving energy. The villagers know better than to move too much at this hour. In some places, people might take a brief siesta. Even a peasant's life has the occasional pause. But more often, they simply reduce their pace. If there are lighter tasks that can be done in the shade, they'll tend to those, delaying the heaviest labor until the sun wanes a bit. We should also note how religion quietly guides their routine beyond just the ringing of the bells. Many peasants will murmur a short grace before this meal, thanking God for the food even if it's meager. They might also recall that it's Friday, if it is, meaning they'll avoid meat in observance of church rules, though for many, meat is a rarity anyway. The village priest has taught them the calendar of saints and holy days. In summer, there are a few days where work might pause or lighten for a festival. The Feast of St. John at midsummer, around June 24, is one, and perhaps the Feast of the Assumption of Mary in mid-August is another. On those days, they attend Mass and pray for blessings on their crops. Sometimes, if a drought is severe or the heat unrelenting, the priest might lead a small procession through the fields, parishioners in tow, carrying a relic or statue and begging God for rain or relief. Faith is woven into the fabric of daily life, offering the people a framework to understand their hardships and a hope that divine favor will sustain them. As afternoon wears on, the heat reaches its peak. This is the hour when mirages of cool shade dance in one's vision, when the body feels heavy and sluggish. Many suffer from headaches in this kind of weather. Indeed, by mid-afternoon, young Pierre has developed a pounding pain behind his eyes. Perhaps he hasn't drunk enough water, or the sun simply got to him. Riding on the ox cart with his father, he rubs his temples, feeling slightly nauseous. Tom notices and makes a decision. He halts the oxen near a small brook that runs by the far side of the meadow. The water here is shallow, just a trickle, but it's relatively clear as it comes from a spring in the woods. He remembers a remedy his own mother taught him. Soaking one's feet in cool water can help take down a feverish heat. So he encourages Pierre to take off his worn leather shoes, which are anyway falling apart, and gave little protection, and let his bare feet dangle in the stream for a few minutes. Pierre sits on the grassy bank and does so. The shock of coolness on his feet sends a shiver through him, but quickly it is soothing. The boy closes his eyes and sighs. Tom refills their flask with fresh water from the spring, and even wets a cloth to lay on the back of Pierre's neck. They might lose a quarter hour in these ministrations, but better that than have the lad collapse entirely. Heat exhaustion is a real threat, though they don't name it as such. They would just say he's overcome or smitten by the sun. In the worst cases, people can die from sun exposure and dehydration, though usually the body forces one to stop before that point by fainting. After a short rest by the brook, Pierre revives a bit, and the two continue with their tasks, slowly loading hay onto the cart. They stack the dry bundles high and tie them down with ropes. Bits of hay stick to their sweat-slick skin, itching terribly. Hay and straw have a way of prickling the flesh. By end of day, tiny scratches and a rash often mottle the haymaker's arms. It's just one more minor misery to endure. The reward will be hay to feed their animals through winter, so they accept the trade-off. In the village center, the afternoon brings other minor dramas. A group of children, having finished whatever chores their parents assigned, try to find ways to amuse themselves without getting into trouble. 3 younger boys, around 7 or 8 years old, take turns rolling an old metal hoop with a stick, a popular game if one has a cast-off barrel hoop or a bent piece of iron. They run barefoot along the dusty road, chasing the rolling circle, laughing and shouting to one another. their bare feet kick up little puffs of dust. The ground is so hot that it almost burns, but their soles are tough and calloused from a lifetime of going without shoes in summer. Still, as they pause in their game under the noonday sun, one boy hops from foot to foot, joking that the ground is turning into hell's griddle. They eventually retreat to the shade of the church wall, panting from exertion and heat. Under the oak tree by the church, the old parish priest sits in the shade in a wooden chair, fanning himself with a woven palm fan left over from Palm Sunday. The children approach more quietly. They respect the priest, a kindly gray-haired man who has served here for decades. He smiles at their flushed, mischievous faces and perhaps tells them to mind not to get heat stroke. The priest remembers too well the burial of a young boy some summers ago who died of a sudden fever after playing too long in the sun. Perhaps it was heat stroke, or perhaps some infection. It's often hard to tell. But as a result, he gently encourages the children to rest during the worst heat. The boys, restless but obedient, sit under the oak and perhaps beg the priest for a story. Priests often have a trove of biblical tales or saints' lives to share, and telling them is one of the few entertainments that doesn't require moving from the shade. He obliges, telling them the story of the 3 men in the fiery furnace, a fitting tale for a hot day, but with a message of faith. His voice is soft, and the boys listen, a couple of them stifling yawns as the warmth and stillness makes their eyelids heavy. After the priest finishes his tale and offers a short prayer, the children disperse to find what relief they can from the heat. One boy suggests they all run down to the river outside the village to splash in the water. The idea is tempting. The river's cool embrace calls to their overheated bodies. A couple of them have waded in the shallows before and loved the freedom of it. But the old priest gently admonishes them. He reminds them of the dangers. Just last summer, a youth from a neighboring village drowned after venturing too far into the deep part of the river. In truth, few of the villagers ever properly learned to swim, and a moment of reckless fun could easily turn tragic. Chastened, the boys abandon the scheme. Instead, they cup some water from the village well to wet their hair and necks, finding a bit of respite without risking the river's depths. Bathing or swimming is a rare luxury for them, one to be approached carefully. On especially sweltering days, a few bold young men might strip and plunge into the pond or river, bend at day's end, but always with caution, and usually in secret. They all know cool water can refresh, yet they also fear it, believing that sudden chilling of the body can lead to sickness, or worse, that water spirits might drag them under, so any dalliance with bathing remains brief and timid. The heavy afternoon drags on. Inside one cottage, lying on a straw pallet in the dimness, an elderly woman named Margot battles an infection in her leg. She cut herself on a rusty sickle a fortnight ago while gleaning leftover wheat. The wound never healed properly. In this hot weather, it festered, and now her leg is swollen and hot to the touch. Margot's daughter changes the herbal poultice on it, a mash of plantain leaves and honey that the local wise woman recommended to draw out the bad humors. The room smells of the sour-sweet odor of infection and the sharp tang of herbal brews. Margot moans softly as her daughter wraps the leg with a clean linen strip. Such infections are dangerous. Without effective medicine, many can die from a simple wound gone rotten. The family prays quietly that her fever will break, and they keep the tiny window open to let in what they think is fresh air, to chase away the bad air causing sickness. They don't know about bacteria, but they believe the foul odors themselves carry disease, the miasma theory. So they burn a little rosemary and wood in a small pot to create smoke, hoping to cleanse the air of evil vapors. The smoke curls up and the smell of rosemary camphor joins the medley of scents. Despite these efforts, Margot's mind drifts in delirium. She imagines she hears church bells, or sees her long-dead husband standing at the door. Her daughter hushes her and sponges her face with lukewarm water. It's a risky time to be ill. The heat can push fevers higher, and food spoils, so they must carefully give her only fresh broth. If she makes it to the cooler days of autumn, maybe she'll survive. But if not, another shallow grave will be dug in the churchyard before summer's end. Such is the precariousness of life for these villagers. Every family has lost someone, a child, a spouse, a parent, and they carry that grief quietly as they continue with daily tasks. There is work to be done whether or not your heart is heavy. In fact, this very summer, one of the men in the hayfield, Jacques, is working with a grief in his chest. Just a month ago, he buried his wife, who died giving birth to their stillborn son. It all happened so fast, one night of labor that went wrong. Now Jacques is alone to raise their other 2 children. Yet here he is, swinging a scythe day after day, because if he doesn't, the crops won't wait. In the evenings, after exhausting himself in the fields, he sits by the modest grave and whispers to his wife about his day, about the children, about how he misses her. But in daytime, he seldom speaks of it. He channels his sorrow into work and prayer, trusting that life must carry on. Such personal tragedies are common, and yet not any less painful for being common. The difference perhaps from modern life is that death is more visible and integrated into daily existence. People die at home, surrounded by family. Children see their siblings and playmates buried often. The villagers comfort one another, but also accept it as God's will. They have rituals and faith to help. A mass said for the departed, a candle lit for a soul in purgatory, a gentle word of sympathy when passing the bereaved in the lane. And they believe, fervently, that after this toil-filled life, there is heaven's rest, that hope is a balm on the harshest days. Returning to the physical world of the village, the sun finally begins to ease its assault as it lowers in the sky. By late afternoon, around the time we'd consider 4 or 5 o'clock, there's a subtle shift. The light turns more golden, the shadows stretch a bit, and a sigh of relief is almost palpable among all living things. People feel a second wind, realizing that the most brutal hours have passed. There is still work, certainly. Often these late hours are among the busiest as everyone tries to accomplish what remains before dusk, but morale lifts knowing the end of day is in sight. Tom and Pierre, after unloading hay at the barn, have now moved to another field to help with preliminary harvesting of barley. A couple of women, including Marie now that she's free from midday chores, join with sickles in hand. Harvest time, which in some regions starts by mid-July, is an all-hands affair. Women and men, elders who can manage, and children who are able, all spread out to reap grain. They grasp the brittle stalks of barley and saw through with short sickles, gathering handfuls into piles. This is tedious, back-aching work, but with more hands it goes faster. The community often helps each other. They know one family alone can't harvest a whole field before the weather might change, so they work in teams, moving from one small holding to another. Today, they focus on the field belonging to the widow Agnes. The villagers, understanding her hardship alone, have made it a priority to ensure her crops are brought in. Tomorrow, maybe they'll move to Jacques' field to support him in his time of grief. There is an unspoken network of mutual aid among the poor, because next year it could be any one of them in need. The mood during harvest work is a notch more lively than earlier tasks. Maybe it's the slight drop in temperature, or the prospect of getting grain, literal sustenance in hand. Maybe it's the small flask of wine that the widow produced to share in thanks. But as they work, one of the women starts a low singing. It's a rhythmic folk song with a refrain that matches the swinging of their arms. Others join in softly. Their voices aren't polished, but the harmony of community makes the work feel lighter. The song they sing might be a local harvest tune passed through generations. The words praise the bounty of the earth and the turning of seasons. It's both a work song and a prayer in a sense. Young Isabel is in the field too, helping the women gather the cut barley and tie it into sheaves with straw ropes. Bits of husk and awn get everywhere, in her hair, stuck to her sweaty cheeks, inside her dress. It's itchy, and she occasionally has to stop to rub her nose as the dust makes her sneeze. But she doesn't complain. She's proud to be considered old enough to help with the serious work. A few other girls her age are doing the same. Sometimes they playfully toss bits of straw at each other when the adults aren't looking, stifling laughter. It's not all drudgery. They find small moments of lightness. As the sun dips further, golden light slants across the fields. This is a beautiful time of day, despite the weariness in everyone's bones. The sky takes on a honey glow. Swallows reappear, swooping low to catch the evening insects. You can hear the distant lowing of cows as someone drives the herd back from pasture to the village pen for milking. The cows' udders are full, having grazed since morning, and they moo in anticipation of release. A couple of older children, or maybe a village herdsman, are bringing them in, walking behind with a long stick, perhaps accompanied by a sheepdog if the village has one. Passing the church, they notice a small gathering at the churchyard. They realize it's a funeral that they nearly forgot. Earlier in the day, the bell had tolled a different pattern to announce a death in the community. The young mother from 2 cottages over lost her newborn last night. The tiny infant lived only 3 days. Such sorrow, yet it's not an uncommon event. A few women and the priest are now burying that little one in a corner of the cemetery. The sky's warm colors cast an almost gentle backdrop to the somber moment. The priest's voice intones the final prayers, and the mother, pale and numb, stands supported by her husband. They will try again to have a child. For now they mourn quietly. There's no wailing or dramatic scene, just a quiet grief that will settle deep in their hearts. The community will console them in small ways, perhaps sending extra food or helping more in the coming days. Life is so fragile here that every family empathizes with every other's losses. Tom crosses himself as he walks by the graveyard. He utters a soft prayer for the baby's soul and an extra prayer for the health of his own family. Perhaps he glances at Pierre and feels grateful that despite everything, his older children survived childhood. There were others who did not. Maybe a memory flickers of a little daughter he and Marie buried years ago during a summer sickness. They speak of her rarely, but they haven't forgotten. At home, the evening routine begins. Marie has stoked a small fire again, mainly to cook a bit of porridge or grain mush for supper and to heat water for washing up. The sun is now low in the sky, and a gentle twilight begins to creep in. Evening in summer is a cherished time. The air finally cools just enough to stir a slight breeze, and the cruel sun eases its gaze. People take advantage of these more forgiving moments to finish up chores and savor a few pleasant activities. With darkness falling, chores still call. Tom and Pierre step back out to tend to the animals one last time. The pig in its sty gets a bucket of kitchen scraps and some water. The pig is an important source of meat come winter, so they keep it fed on whatever they can spare. The chickens are already roosting, but eggs must be collected from the day. They find 2 eggs, a good addition to tomorrow's breakfast perhaps, unless Marie decides to save them to trade on market day. The cow and goats that were inside are checked as well. The cow is contentedly chewing cud after being milked, and the goats nibble some leftover cabbage leaves. Marie tossed them. Everything in peasant life is efficiently recycled. No scrap goes unused if possible, whether as feed, fertilizer, or fuel. Jane the toddler has finally succumbed to a nap late in the afternoon, the only way to cope with the heat for a little one, and he wakes up cranky now. Marie gives him a little cool water to sip and swipes him clean with a damp cloth. Bathing a baby in a tub is a rare event, perhaps only done occasionally in summer when water isn't as scarce. More often, they just wipe him down like this to keep him reasonably clean. The dust and sweat of the day coat everyone's skin, but daily baths are unheard of. At most, one might wash face and hands in the morning and rinse off dirt at day's end. They settle down to eat. Supper is usually a lighter meal than the midday dinner. Tonight, it is essentially the remainder of the soup from noon, thinned with a bit of water and bulked with a few more greens from the garden and some boiled carrots. Along with it, there's a bit of barley porridge left in the pot that has thickened to a gel. It will be eaten cold, almost like a pudding, but not sweet, of course. The family gathers around the hearth to eat, each with their wooden bowl and spoon. Light comes from the hearth flames and a single tallow candle that sputters on a block of wood by the wall. During supper, they actually speak a bit more than they did at noon. The worst heat is past, and the work is nearly done for the day, so spirits lift slightly despite everyone's fatigue. Marie asks how the haymaking and barley harvesting went. Tom nods wearily, but says it was a productive day, even if brutal under the sun. Pierre, between mouthfuls, recounts with a hint of pride how his father cooled him at the brook when he felt faint. He's eager to show he kept working despite the difficulty. Marie gives a small, concerned smile and reminds Pierre to drink plenty. They mention the sad funeral that took place. Marie crosses herself and instinctively pulls little Jean closer as she imagines the other mother's grief. The conversation is gentle and muted. No one raises their voice or laughs loudly. It's as if the whole village is a bit hushed after the long, hot day. After eating, they all feel a profound tiredness. Their muscles ache, and the simple act of sitting together brings both relief and an almost painful reminder of how hard they've worked since sunrise. As twilight deepens, they linger a short while. Sometimes, on pleasant evenings, villagers will sit outside their doorsteps to catch any breeze and exchange a few words with neighbors. In this village, a couple of Tom's neighbors are out front of their homes, quietly chatting about the day. One speaks of a fox he spotted near the chicken coop at dusk and how he'll set a trap. Another complains about some tool that broke and will need the smith to mend it. These ordinary exchanges are comforting. Everyone shares in the same small struggles, and there's solidarity in that. Simple joys sometimes blossom in these moments. Perhaps one of the women starts a gentle lullaby-like song as she rocks her baby to sleep on her lap, and the tune drifts through the warm air. Or a couple of children continue a little game of pebble tossing on the doorstep, giggling softly when one misses. In Tom and Marie's cottage, Isabelle quietly begins to tell Pierre a bit of gossip she heard from the other girls about that boy from the next village. Pierre teases her, calling the boy lucky to get a chatterbox for a wife someday, and Isabelle sticks out her tongue in response. It's all very mild and affectionate sibling ribbing. Marie, listening, can't help but smile faintly. It is good, she thinks, that even in a life as hard as this, children can still be children for a while. Tonight, no special event or festival enlivens the village. It's an ordinary summer night after a tiring day. On some evenings earlier in the season, there might have been a little celebration. For instance, on Midsummer Eve, the village lit a bonfire in the common field, and people sang and danced in a circle, enjoying a rare moment of merriment. Those nights break up the long toil of summer with cherished memories. But now, in the thick of the agricultural calendar, most are simply focused on getting enough rest to do it all again tomorrow. The light outside is now a deep blue, and the first stars appear. Within the cottage, the gloom is held at bay by the dim orange glow of embers. It's time to prepare for sleep. The peasants' day runs by the sun, and they waste no costly candles staying up late. Marie takes a moment to tidy up what she can. She covers the remaining soup pot to keep insects out, places the wooden bowls aside to wash in the morning, and makes sure the precious bread loaf is tucked safely away from mice. Small tasks, done almost unconsciously, part of the rhythm of winding down. One important nightly chore is tending to personal comfort in whatever small ways they can. Marie pulls out the family's one good comb, a finely carved piece of wood with close-set teeth, and begins to comb through her daughter Isabel's long hair by the firelight. This comb is not just for untangling hair, it's a tool in the constant battle against lice. As Marie draws it through Isabel's brown locks, she inspects the teeth and occasionally taps the comb, dislodging a louse or two into the flame of the hearth. A quiet pop can be heard as the insects meet their end in the embers. Isabel winces slightly, not from pain of the combing, her mother is gentle, but from the knowledge of what little critters live on her despite their efforts. There is no shame in it. Every household has its share of lice and fleas. Combing and sometimes rubbing hair with scented oils or vinegar is about the best they can do to keep the numbers down. Marie murmurs reassuringly that she'll sew some crushed lavender into Isabel's headscarf tomorrow. Some say it helps repel the lice. Isabel nods sleepily. Marie passes the comb to Pierre and encourages him to run it through his shorter hair as well. Teen boys often resist such grooming, but Pierre dutifully combs a bit. He too flicks a couple of tiny bugs into the fire. It's simply part of the nightly routine. Earlier in the day, Marie had mixed some herbs like pennyroyal and chamomile into the fresh straw she put in the bedding, which is another common tactic to deter fleas in their sleeping area. These measures help a little, but nothing can eliminate the pests fully in a world without modern insecticides. The peasants have learned to live with constant itching as a background reality. Next, they arrange the sleeping spaces. Tom and Marie's bed is merely a rough wooden frame in the corner, laced with rope and topped with a thin mattress stuffed with straw. It's barely large enough for the two of them, and when one turns, the other feels it, but it's better than the ground. The children will sleep on pallets on the floor, essentially piles of straw or maybe old sacks spread with a linen sheet if they have one. Earlier in the day, Marie had set out some fresh straw to air, and now she and the children gather it into the usual spots. They shake it out to dislodge any obvious bugs, though plenty remain hidden. The small house is nearly wall-to-wall bedding at night. In one area, a bit of raised wooden platform serves as a bed for the elderly grandfather, or for any sick family member if present. Tonight, everyone is in decent health, so it's just the usual arrangement. Parents in the bedstead, children on floor straw, baby Jean cradled between Marie and the wall so he won't be accidentally squashed. The animals that sleep inside at night, a couple of chickens in a wicker crate, and perhaps the goat, are settled as well. The goat is tied to a post but with enough rope to lie down on a bundle of straw near the door. The presence of animals means additional fleas and certainly some strong odors. The cottage smells of goat and the faint ammonia of old urine despite sweeping. It simply can't be helped with animals around. By now the family is so used to it that they only notice if something is truly foul. A bit of incense or herbs burned earlier has taken the sharpest edge off the smell. Before all is dark, they take a last opportunity to wash up slightly. There's a wooden basin with a few inches of water, not fresh from the well, but what's left from earlier chores. Everyone takes a turn rinsing their hands and faces. The water is cloudy and tinged with brown by the end, but it removes the worst of the day's dust. Marie even dabs a wet cloth to the back of her neck and along her arms, wiping away the dried sweat. It's not a bath, but it feels soothing. If someone has particularly dirty feet, Pierre's are grimy from the fields, they'll quickly splash them, mindful of not using too much water. They've learned that sleeping with dirt and sweat is normal, but a quick rub down where possible can prevent some rashes and is simply more comfortable. Now comes the quiet moment of prayer. In the corner of the cottage hangs a simple wooden crucifix, and beside it a palm frond from Palm Sunday long past, now yellowed with age. The family kneels or bows their heads. Tom leads softly, "Our Father who art in heaven." They all join in, voices low and steady in the near darkness. Then a Hail Mary, and perhaps an invocation to their patron saint, Saint Fiacre, say patron of gardeners, appropriate for farmers. They ask for protection through the night, for good weather and health, and give thanks for making it through another day. Even little Jean seems to quiet as if sensing the reverence of the moment, his eyes big and reflective in the firelight. The prayers are brief but sincere, a spiritual closure to the day. Hours pass. The family sleeps fitfully. They drift in and out of shallow slumber as the night wears on. Now and then, someone shifts or murmurs, disturbed by an itch or a distant noise, a dog barking in the far darkness, or the high buzz of a mosquito may half awaken one of them for a moment. Marie, in her light doze, brushes a crawling insect off her arm and adjusts the straw under her, trying to find a cooler spot. Tom, sweating even at midnight, sometimes fans himself with the edge of the thin sheet before sleep claims him again. Perhaps around midnight, little Jean wakes crying from thirst or a bad dream. Marie again soothes him with a sip of water and a soft murmur of an old prayer or lullaby about guardian angels watching over him. He settles, thumb in mouth. Tom might wake and cough from the thick air, or a wisp of smoke from the hearth that occasionally burps into the room. He might step outside for a moment to relieve himself. There is no indoor privy, of course. He stands outside under the starlight and does his business by a shrub, hearing the distant frogs by the river. The cool night air on his skin is a blessing, and he takes a few extra breaths, savoring it, before heading back in. From outside comes the nighttime sounds of a medieval village in summer. The chorus of crickets is loud in the grass, joined by the occasional croak of frogs from the nearby stream or pond. A barn owl screeches softly as it glides over the fields on silent wings, hunting mice. In the distance, a dog barks, perhaps chasing an unseen critter or alerting to some noise. The villagers keep a few dogs mainly for guarding and herding, and at least one will bark at intervals through the night, a canine sentinel keeping watch. Inside the cottage, the darkness is complete, save for a faint red glow from the banked embers on the hearth. The heat of the day still radiates from the walls and the ground, making the air heavy. The family lies sprawled on their straw pallets, covers thrown off, or only a light sheet draped loosely if anything. Their breathing is a bit uneven. One can hear someone let out a long sigh, another mutter in their sleep. Skin glistens with a sheen of perspiration even now. The night is cooler than the day, but not by a lot. It's a close, humid warmth that doesn't easily dissipate. It's not uncommon for people to wake intermittently. Perhaps Marie stirs again in the dark, and half awake, listens to the faint sounds, the crickets outside, one of the children's soft snore, the rustle of a chicken adjusting on its perch. She feels a trickle of sweat down her back and shifts her position on the straw, finding a drier spot on the linen sheet. The straw mattress crackles quietly. She knows the alarm, in the form of the cock's crow, will come all too soon, but for now, in this drowsy state, time feels suspended. She says a tiny prayer in her mind, something like, "Thank you, Lord, for keeping us safe this day. Watch over us this night." It's a thought she has each night, an anchoring moment of gratitude and hope. In the middle of the night, the world of the village belongs to the insects and the subtle creaking of cooling wood. The great tree by the church extends its branches over silent houses, as if protecting them. The sky is moonless tonight, but thick with stars. The Milky Way arches overhead like a silver river of light. Of course, the villagers don't know it, as the Milky Way. They call it perhaps the road to Santiago, or simply regard it with silent awe as part of God's creation. Tom, on his brief outing under the stars, looked up for a moment at that glittering band and found a kind of solace in it. The same stars guided him home when he first walked back from distant fields as a new husband, the same stars his ancestors looked upon. Under their eternal light, his own troubles feel both small and somehow connected to the grand order of things. Early dawn is not far off. In summer, nights are short. Already by perhaps 3 in the morning, a faint paling shows in the east. A rooster, confused or simply eager, gives an experimental crow in the pre-dawn dark. No one rises at that first sign. They cling to the last moments of rest. But by 4, the chorus of cockerels is undeniable, and the sky is lightening to gray. And so, as a new day begins, the cycle will repeat. The peasants will wake, stiff and itching from the night, yet grateful if no calamity befell them in the dark. They will face the sun and heat again, to labor and endure because they must. In late summer, they know the crucial work of harvest is both a burden and a hope. All the pain of sore muscles and sunburn will translate into sacks of grain that mean survival through the winter. There is a quiet nobility in their persistence, though they would not think of it in such terms. It's simply life, the only life they know. In our modern world, we might reflect on how far removed we are from those daily struggles. As we lie perhaps in a comfortable bed, cooled by a fan or air conditioning, it's almost hard to imagine the full weight of a medieval summer pressing on us. The relentless sun, the constant labor just to eat, the lack of any escape from nature's whims. Yet, thinking gently of these long-ago peasants, we can feel a sense of respect and maybe gratitude. They endured so much with stoicism, forging existence out of hard earth with basic tools, staying true to their faith, finding moments of joy where they could. Picture now that village one more time as the sun rises on another day. The church bell rings for matins, the morning prayer, its tones soft in the pearly light. A new day of heat and work begins, but the peasants face it as they always do, with resilience born of necessity, supported by family and community. They have no promise that today will be easier than yesterday, but they trust in the natural order. The sun will cross the sky, evening will come, and eventually the seasons will turn. Summer will give way to harvest, then to the slower cold of winter, then spring renewal, and so on. Time for them is not kept by clocks, but by the rhythm of the earth and the ringing of church bells, by the growth of crops and the liturgy of the church. As you drift now, perhaps half dreaming, imagine standing in that village at dawn, then watching the day unfold in all its harsh simplicity. You see the hard work, the sweat, the dust, but also the glimmers of humanity. A mother comforting her child, neighbors helping each other in a field, a priest praying for rain, children playing in the twilight, a wife tenderly dabbing her husband's sunburned face with a cool cloth. These small acts of care and perseverance are what enabled people to survive generation after generation. No chronicler wrote down the names of these peasants or the details of their daily summer struggles. In the grand history books, kings and battles claim the pages, while humble villagers appear only as statistics or as background characters in the story of a noble's life. Yet here, in our imagination, we give them a voice and presence. We remember that countless unnamed men, women, and children lived through blazing summers without any of the comforts we take for granted. They left little behind, maybe a line in a tax roll or a parish death register, a carved initial on a church bench, or simply the foundation stones of the cottage where their family once lived. Their graves, often unmarked wooden crosses that long ago faded back into the soil, gave no biographies, and their stories faded with the memories of their grandchildren. And yet, they collectively shaped the world. They grew the food, built the villages, tended the flocks, and kept society running through the ages. The castles and cathedrals might dominate the skyline, but it was the hands of such peasants that carried the stones, tilled the land, and bore the burdens that allowed civilization to continue. One cannot help but feel a quiet admiration for their endurance and spirit. There was no glory in their suffering, and we should not romanticize it as a simpler time. It was brutally difficult, filled with aches, pains, and the grief of loss. However, in reflecting calmly on their lives, we might find a kind of meditation on human resilience and on finding contentment in the very midst of hardship. Now, as this gentle journey through a medieval summer's day comes to a close, you might feel a sense of calm and connection. The slowness and earthiness of that life has a way of grounding us. Our modern worries recede for a time as we align our thoughts with the basic rhythm of sun and toil and rest that govern those lives. The purpose here was not to thrill or startle, but to soothe, to quietly observe that even under a burning sun, people found ways to cope, to support each other, and to find little pleasures. Perhaps you have already drifted to sleep, imagining the soft buzz of the meadow or the crackle of the hearth in the quiet night. If so, that's perfectly all right. You can subconsciously carry with you the images of rippling golden fields at dusk, or the sound of a distant evening bell. If you are still awake, allow yourself to appreciate the comfort you lie in, and let your mind rest, knowing that those medieval peasants, in all their toil and trouble, also experienced moments of rest under the same sky. They too looked up at the stars before closing their eyes, and felt a sense of wonder and hope. In their world, evening was a time of relief and gratitude. They had survived another day and earned their sleep. We, listening centuries later, can share in that gratitude for the roof over our head, for the food in our belly, for the opportunity to rest safely. Thank you for staying with this story tonight, for walking the village paths and sunlit fields in your imagination. Let your eyes grow heavy now with that sense of peace and continuity. The medieval peasants have laid down their heads, their day of labor done, and so should you. As the church bell softly marks the early hours of night, and the last cottage lights go out one by one, breathe in the stillness. In this quiet moment, past and present gently embrace, and all is well. Good night, and sleep well, dear friend. May you find rest as peaceful as a summer night in that long-ago village, and may tomorrow bring you light and renewal. Close your eyes and imagine the cool shelter of a stone church at noon, the whisper of a breeze at dusk, the resilience of humble people who endured, and let those gentle thoughts carry you into sweet dreams. Good night.